The Christmas season. That cozy time of the year of being together and looking back on the year that's passed and on how good we actually have it. The soundtrack of this period has, of course, been dominated for ages by the Mariah Careys, Michael Bublé's, and Whams of this world. And perhaps that's exactly why so many people dislike Christmas, or the music associated with it. People can see it as forced cheerfulness. Personally, I love Christmas music. Just not the overplayed, worn-out songs we're forced to hear far too often every year in such a short period of time. I always look for my musical Christmas enjoyment in the less obvious corner. Songs that I generally consider my favorite Christmas songs. Yes, dear viewers, I have favorite Christmas songs, are usually songs that, technically speaking, aren't Christmas songs per se, but are still associated with the holidays because of their setting or lyrical context. Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis by Tom Waits is a good example of that. Or Family Life by the Blue Nile. But the song I want to discuss today also qualifies for that category of pseudo-Christmas songs. And that is, of course, the Pogues with Kirsty MacColl and the touching Fairytale of New York. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of We're Only in It for the Music, a YouTube series that takes you through the musical universe, from ABBA to Zappa and everything in between and beyond. Click the like and subscribe buttons, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode. But enough of that, never mind the bollocks. We're only in it for the music. Welcome to Season 2 of We're Only in It for the Music. In today's song review, I'm taking you to the Christmas hit that actually wasn't a cliché Christmas song at all. A beautiful narrative track about a troubled relationship between a man and a woman, a somewhat grim and gritty fairy tale set against the backdrop of New York City. So pour yourself a pint of Guinness, because today we're diving into one of the most beautiful Christmas songs of all time, Fairytale of New York. Most people know the Pogues as that cheerful London-based but Irish-sounding folk punk group led by the perpetually drunk Shane MacGowan. The band themselves agree that the song in question was written in 1985, 40 years ago, but the origins of Fairytale are often disputed. MacGowan claims the song was the result of a bet with their producer Elvis Costello. Elvis, himself a highly gifted songwriter, insisted that the Pogues were incapable of writing a Christmas hit single. The group's manager, Frank Murray, on the other hand, claims that he was the one who came up with the idea of attempting to write a Christmas song simply because it sounded interesting to him. And by interesting, he probably meant commercially very attractive. He could already picture his bank account being topped up every December. Banjo player Jem Finer composed the melody and the original concept for the song, which at that stage was still set in County Clare on Ireland's west coast. It was a story about a sailor in New York staring across the Atlantic Ocean, wistfully dreaming of being back home in Ireland. Finer's wife, Marcia, didn't care much for the seafaring storyline, but suggested writing new lyrics based on a conversation between a couple at Christmas. Jem Finer told the NME, "I'd written 2 songs complete with tunes. One had a good tune and crap lyrics. The other had the idea for Fairytale, but the tune was poxy. I gave them both to Shane, and he gave it a Broadway melody, and there it was." The song title, the musical structure, and its lyrical theme of a couple's conversation were completed by the end of 1985 and were discussed by Shane in an interview with Melody Maker in its 1985 Christmas edition. "I sat down, opened the sherry, got the peanuts out, and pretended it was Christmas. It's even called a Fairytale of New York. It's quite sloppy, more like A Pair of Brown Eyes than Sally McLenane, but there's also a Salith bit in the middle which you can definitely dance to. Like a country and Irish ballad, but one you can do a brisk waltz to, especially when you've got about 3 of these drinks inside you. But the song itself is quite depressing in the end. It's about these old Irish-American Broadway stars who are sitting round at Christmas talking about whether things are going okay." Shane decided to name the song after the 1973 novel by J.P. Donlevy, a book Jem Finer happened to be reading and had left lying around in the studio. Shane admitted in the same Melody Maker interview that he was disappointed the song wasn't finished in time to be released for Christmas 1985. He also mentioned that the track would become part of an EP that the Pogues would record shortly afterwards. It wasn't until January 1986 that the Pogues recorded the song during the sessions with Elvis Costello that would result in the Poetry in Motion EP, with bassist Kate O'Riordan singing the female vocal parts. Elvis suggested naming the song Christmas Eve in the Drunk Tank, after the opening lines, but the Pogues weren't particularly enthusiastic about Costello's idea. Shane, not exactly a stranger to a drink himself, explained to Elvis that a song with such a title probably wouldn't be well received by the public and might not get any radio play. Most of the lyrics were written by Shane while he was recovering in Malmö, Sweden, after contracting double pneumonia during a Scandinavian tour in 1985. He later explained, "You get a lot of delirium and stuff, so I got quite a few good images out of that." Despite multiple attempts to record the track, the band was still unhappy with the results, and Fairytale was temporarily set aside to revisit later. The Christmas season had passed anyway, so that momentum was gone. Guitarist Philip Chevron later said it was not quite there. It needed to have a full-on, confident performance from the band, which it lacked. Steve Lillywhite, producer of the final version, described the earlier take with O'Riordan's vocals diplomatically as not fully realized. In March 1986, the Pogues toured the United States for the first time. The opening concert of the tour took place in New York City, a place that had fascinated Shane for a long time and inspired him to write new lyrics for the song. Among the members of the city's Irish-American community who attended the Pogues show and later visited the band backstage were filmmaker Peter Dougherty and actor Matt Dillon. Both would later become friends of the band and play important roles in the video for Fairytale of New York. Another source of inspiration was the film Once Upon a Time in America, directed by Sergio Leone, best known for his spaghetti westerns starring Clint Eastwood. Shane and whistle player Spider Stacy watched the film repeatedly on the tour bus. In addition to rewriting the lyrics, Shane composed a slow piano introduction clearly inspired by Leone's film score by the great Ennio Morricone. This piano intro was later edited into the recording of the more upbeat melody in order to create the final version of the song. As 1986 sped by, the Pogues encountered a series of problems and obstacles that drastically slowed down and even briefly halted the recording process. Their record label, Stiff Records, was experiencing financial trouble and could no longer fund the sessions. They still owned the rights to the Pogues' recordings, however, which meant the band had no choice but to secure a new distribution deal with another label in order to release new material. In the meantime, their relationship with Costello had cooled significantly, and the band and producer parted ways. After increasingly erratic behavior, Kate O'Riordan, who had become romantically involved with Costello, left the band in October 1986. Her departure meant that the song had now lost its intended female singer. It took a long time before all the issues at Stiff Records were resolved, and the Pogues were only able to return to the studio in 1987 to work on their third studio album, now under the production of Steve Lillywhite. A new demo for Fairytale was recorded at the famed Abbey Road Studios in March of that year. On this demo, Shane performed both the male and female vocal parts himself. It wasn't until the third recording sessions in August 1987 at the nearby RAK Studios that someone suggested Lillywhite take the demo home to play it for his wife, Kirsty MacColl, and ask her to record a new guide vocal. After carefully recording MacColl's vocals, Lillywhite brought the new track back to the studio and played it for the band. The Pogues were very impressed by Kirsty's performance and realized she was the ideal voice for the female character in the song. Shane later said, "Kirsty knew exactly the right measure of viciousness and femininity and romance to put into it, and she had a very strong character, and it came across in a big way. In operas, if you have a double aria, it's what the woman does that really matters. The man lies, the woman tells the truth." Shane re-recorded his own vocals alongside the tape of Kirsty's lines. The two never recorded their parts together in the same studio. The song was then completed with the addition of harp, brass, and strings. These were recorded at Townhouse Studios on the very last day of the sessions for what would become the album If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Reflecting on the recording of the song in a 2020 interview, Shane said, "It was a happy time for the group. It's our bohemian rhapsody." Shane also paid tribute to MacColl for lending her voice to the track. "I was very grateful to Kirsty. I don't think it would have been such a big hit without her contribution." Fairytale of New York follows an Irish immigrant who, on Christmas Eve, reminisces about the holidays of his past while sleeping off a binge in the NYC drunk tank. An old man sharing the cell with him sings a passage from the traditional Irish ballad, The Rare Old Mountain Dew. This causes the drunk Irishman to drift into a dream about a former lover. The song then continues as a call and response between a couple whose youthful dreams have been shattered by alcohol and drug addiction. Hurling insults and bitterness at each other, the lines, Sinatra was swinging and cars big as bars, seem to place the song in the late 1940s. Although the music video for Fairytale clearly shows a contemporary New York of the 1980s. On the impact of the lyrics, Helen Brown of the Daily Telegraph writes, "In careening wildly through a gamut of moods from maudlin to euphoric, sentimental to profane, mudslinging to sincerely devoted, in the space of 4 glorious minutes, it seemed perfectly suited to Christmas, a time which highlights the disparity between the haves and have-nots around the world. Those of us lucky enough to spend the day with friends and families by a cozy fire with a full stomach think of the lonely, the homeless, and the hungry." As MacColl and Shane dialogue descends from the ecstasy of their first kiss into an increasingly vitriolic argument, their words puts the average family's seasonal bickering into perspective. "You're a bum, you're a punk, you're an old slut on junk." The song's row ends with an expression of love and hope against all the odds, as Shane's character promises MacColl's that far from wrecking her dreams, he has kept them with his own. "Can't make it all alone," he pleads. "I've built my dreams around you." It's a set of lyrics that today would undoubtedly be considered offensive. It's ironic to think that a song containing lines like, "You scumbag, you maggot, you cheap lousy faggot, happy Christmas, your arse, I pray God it's our last," has grown into one of the most beloved Christmas songs of all time. When Fairytale of New York first appeared on Top of the Pops, the BBC asked Kirsty MacColl to replace arse with the supposedly milder ass. During a 1992 performance, she changed it even further to "You're cheap and you're haggard." In 2007, BBC Radio 1 went a step further and edited out faggot and slut to avoid offense. MacColl's mother called the band ridiculous, while the Pogues found it amusing. The BBC defended the edit, claiming some listeners might be offended. Ah, those fragile little souls glued to their radios. The BBC soon reversed the decision, and other stations, including the more conservative Radio 2, had never stopped playing the original. MTV UK also censored several words. In 2018, 2 RTE presenters called for "faggot" to be bleeped, but the broadcaster refused. Days later, Shane defended the lyric, explaining it reflected the character's voice, not an intention to insult. If people preferred a bleeped version, he said he was absolutely fine with that, but he didn't want an argument. It mirrors Mark Knopfler's defense of the F word in Money for Nothing. He, too, was singing in character, not attacking anyone. Click the card to watch the Dire Straits episode. Money for Nothing is covered extensively in the Brothers in Arms review. In 2019, BBC Radio Solent host Alex Dyke announced he would not play the song, calling it nasty and down-market shav bilge. Others echoed criticism of the lyrics. In 2020, the BBC again opted for a censored version on Radio 1, while Radio 2 aired the original. Nick Cave accused the BBC of mutilating the song. Since 2022, Radio 2 has used a record company edit muting slut and changing "you cheap lousy faggot" to "you're cheap and you're haggard." And in December 2023, The Telegraph reported that Boom Radio would play the uncensored version, after 91% of its listeners said they weren't offended. The chorus of the song includes the line, "The boys of the NYPD choir were singing Galway Bay." But in reality, the NYPD has no choir, only pipes and drums, who also appear in the music video. The NYPD pipes and drums did not know the Irish ballad Galway Bay, so they sang a song they all did know, the Mickey Mouse March, the theme tune from the Mickey Mouse Club. The footage was slowed down and shown only in short fragments to obscure the fact that the pipes and drums were performing an entirely different song. Pogues manager Frank Murray recalled that the pipes and drums were heavily drunk during the bus ride to the video shoot and ended up arriving in an even worse state than the Pogues themselves. They refused to work unless they were given more alcohol. Dorian Lynskey of The Guardian wrote, Once upon a time, a band set out to make a Christmas song. Not about snow or sleigh rides or mistletoe or miracles, but lost youth and ruined dreams. A song in which Christmas is as much the problem as it is the solution. A kind of anti-Christmas song that ended up being, for a generation, the Christmas song. It is loved because it feels more emotionally real than the homesick sentimentality of White Christmas, or the bullish bonhomie of Merry Christmas, everybody. But it contains elements of both, and the story it tells is an unreal fantasy of 1940s New York dreamed up in 1980s London. Fairytale of New York was announced as the nation's favorite Christmas song in a 90-minute ITV special on the 22nd of December 2012, following a UK-wide viewer survey. In the UK, it is the most played Christmas song of the 21st century. It has appeared in numerous UK and Irish polls, including placing #1 on VH1's Greatest Christmas Songs for 3 consecutive years, 2004, 2005, 2006. It topped a Blinkbox poll for the UK's favorite Christmas song, with the 1980s also voted the best decade for Christmas music. Other 1980s entries in the top 10 included Wham's Last Christmas, Band-Aid's Do They Know It's Christmas, Chris Rea, Driving Home for Christmas. In topping yet another UK poll in December 2014, The Independent noted, the poll is the latest in a number of surveys that has named Fairytale of New York the nation's favorite Christmas song. According to PRS for Music Data Analysis, the song is estimated to generate £400,000 in royalties per year. Not bad at all for a song by a folk punk band with a notoriously drunk frontman. There are people who claim that Shane MacGowan is a terrible singer simply because his voice doesn't fit the cliché of a good vocalist with a crystal clear tone. But it is precisely that imperfection that makes him such a powerful interpreter. His voice is not conventionally beautiful. The beauty lies in the ugliness. Like artists such as Tom Waits and Bob Dylan, Shane doesn't possess a clean, flawless voice, but he conveys so much authenticity and emotion in his delivery that he can move a listener deeply. When Shane, in his drunken voice, croons about Christmas Eve in the drunk tank, I believe him. In that moment, he is the character. Dorian Lynskey is absolutely right in saying that fairy tale sounds far more authentic than the cliché-ridden kitsch we are usually bombarded with. No sleigh bells, no Christmas chimes in the arrangement, just a gorgeous Celtic waltz. No lyrics about mistletoe or Christmas trees. Sure, Christmas is mentioned a few times, but those references could easily have been replaced by something else, and the song would still stand strong. One could cautiously conclude that Fairytale of New York, as a Christmas song, transcends Christmas. Perhaps that's why so many people treasure this gem by the Pogues and Kirsty MacColl so dearly. So let the bells ring out for Christmas Day. Let them ring for Shane, let them ring for Kirsty. And that was the Pogues and Kirsty MacColl. That was Fairytale of New York. What do you think of this song? What's your favorite Christmas track? Let me know in the comments section below. I'm always curious to hear your thoughts. Listen to Fairytale of New York and all the other music from this series through the Spotify playlist. And check out the social media pages on Facebook and Instagram for all updates. Because I will follow you if you follow me. You'll find all the links below this video. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, so you never miss an episode. Tell your friends about the channel. Why not? It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. And in the meantime, drop the needle, press play, and remember, we're only in it for the music.